Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Grace of a Military Child in Life podcast. Military families are not like your traditional family. They are strong, brave, resilient, and some of the most incredible people I know. My name is Gracie, a U.S. Army brat, and I am your host. I am honored to be able to give military family members like myself a place for them to share their stories and experiences in the military life. Stay tuned for this week's guest. Hi, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Grace of a Military Child in Life. Today, I'm here with Nazeraeh. So, Nazeraeh, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
I'm very well. Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to kind of share my experience, honestly.
Yeah. So, kind of just tell me what your experience was like. Give us an overview.
So I feel like being a military child, it carries out through your entire lifetime because it's a lifestyle that you can't ever let go of because you're born into it and it's just how you live. But technically speaking, my military child lifetime, it was pretty short in a sense. I'm still living it, but from what I remember, the active military base, living on base and going to school on base and having all of the friends that had their dads deployed and all of that great stuff. That ended for me when I was 6 years old. My dad was killed in action in Afghanistan in 2006. So that military identity was kind of fighting it.
Yeah.
Fighting for it for a few years, just because once that happens, it's an abrupt change and you are kind of pushed to the side in a sense. They make you move off base.
Right.
I had to switch schools and it was a little tough. And understanding what that identity meant for me, it was difficult as a little kid, being 6 years old. It was why am I not with my friends? Where are their dads? What's going on?
Right.
But it was a rewarding experience. It is a rewarding experience. Understanding the hard work that our parents go through on a day-to-day basis to serve our country. It's the biggest honor to be a child of a soldier. It's just an overwhelming field of joy and chaos at the same time. Because you never know what's happening truly. You can get as much information from your parents as you want, but there's always some sugarcoating to it because they don't want to scare you or overwhelm you. And you're really navigating it on your own in your own mental pathways. And it's a lot. It's a lot. And we're put in this position at a young age and we're just forced to navigate through it. There's no option. So it's different.
Yeah, for real. And I mean, I cannot imagine, what you went through, especially at such a young age, having kind of your first introduction, because that's the age where you start to remember things and you start to understand and comprehend and, finally getting used to that, finally having, because it's about kindergarten, first grade age, finally going to school, meeting other military kids, in an environment that I guess you could call yours, where it's just you, and then that being ripped away from you. And that's very challenging.
Yeah, it definitely was challenging. And there were just a lot of obstacles to face because even though you are switched off base, you go to school there and there's still the kids that were living off base with their parents being in the military. So those daddy-daughter lunches and your parent to school day, you see them in uniform and you're just what's going on? Where's my dad? What's happening? And you're faced with the harsh reality of he's not on deployment and he's not coming back. And I dabbled in that huge dilemma for years, probably till I was about 10. Maybe he's just on deployment,
Yeah, trying to cover that up, trick yourself.
Yeah, really kind of transform what my mind was thinking about death and just being okay, he's gone. I know what this is like. He'll be back. But as time goes on, you kind of have to remember that the people around you that have their parents, it's a blessing. The time that you had with your parent is a blessing, and you keep pushing forward and essentially pretending like they're there living for that person and then just honoring their existence as much as you can.
Yeah, I can imagine, you know, because even with my dad's injuries, I'm thankful he's still here, but that's still, a constant in itself of like, why did this happen? Why did it happen? Why does it have to happen? Does this, why is this the reality that we're living in? And so I can't imagine having, a parent not there and have to navigate that, mentally. It's sounds unreal.
Yeah, and there have been instances too where my mom and I had talked about like what if he came home? And I
Yeah,
know that even is like such a psychological like challenging function in your brain like okay, my dad like he's obviously not the same.
right,
Got to navigate this new life as peacefully and just as calmly as possible because that's a lot on children and the parent that's going
right.
through it and the parent that has to support the parent that went through this life-changing, life-altering like occurrence. Like you just it's a whole family affair at that point where
Yeah.
you gotta really become a team and look at the future that's ahead. So that's a lot. And my mom and I talked about what it might have been like, and it's just like a lot of what ifs create a lot of clouds that just, they're either super bright or super negative, but they all end up like unreal. You just can't.
Yeah. I always like to say that everything happens for a reason, like,
Mhm.
whether it be something as catastrophic and traumatic as, what we went through with my dad's injuries, or something as simple as, missing a stoplight, So like everything happens for a reason, no matter how big or little it is. And it's really hard to look back on some things and say, well, what if it did happen this way? What if my dad did come home?
Yeah.
But like you said, then you still deal with, other, I guess, consequences of anyone who deploys, like obviously comes back not the same. Like PTSD, most of the time there's some sort of traumatic brain injury that goes with it. And honestly, like you guys at back home change too, because you get into a new rhythm, a new routine of, being by yourselves and as your family unit without your parent there.
Yeah. Overall, it's tough being a military child,
It
man. It's
is.
one of those lifestyles that not everyone can live.
Yeah.
That's why the events that we go to, like Spook Suck, where we are valued in a different manner because of the perseverance and the complete and utter, like, just wants to succeed because we've already seen the worst of the worst at some points, mentally, physically, emotionally. And there's nothing we can't do when
Yeah.
already went through so much as a young kid. Now that you're an adult, like you carry that on with you, and it's not something that just goes away. That's why this lifestyle is forever lived. I will claim I'm a military child till the day I die.
Yes. No, I love that because some people, you get the people who are so proud of that, and wear it kind of like a badge of honor. Like I am a military child, like that is who I am. One of my friends says it's part of her identity. Like it is like a describing factor of her that she is a military child. And then you have the people on the flip side of it who are like, I don't want to be associated with it. Like that was such a challenging part of my life, whether, you had the traumatic situations that we've been through or not. Like some people just don't want to be associated with the lifestyle because of what they've been through. And it's looking at it, it's hard for me to see that because, we understand how rewarding the lifestyle is. We understand how life changing and impactful it is. And like you mentioned, the events that we get to go to, yes, we experience traumatic situations, but there are people out there who want to support us, who want, to support our education, support our careers, support us because of our parents' sacrifices.
Yeah, and it's definitely a beautiful thing to know that there are people that from the outside looking in see these sacrifices we've all made as a family, because it really is a unified experience. We're all going through it, even though they are physically there. We're at home trying to hold down the fort and make sure the other parent is at least somewhat at ease, even though they're in constant like worry of their partner. Like, it's just a
Yeah.
lot. It is a lot. We
Yeah.
could all write about our experience and none of it.
Exactly. You go through so many different things, and that's why so many people try to categorize the military life of, this is what you go through. You go through a PCS, you go through deployments, you go through everything. They try to say like this is what you go through, but it's not the same. Everyone goes through different changes of life and seasons of life that you can't necessarily categorize or say, this is the life of a military child. Everyone's life is so different no matter what you go through.
Yeah. And I'm definitely honored to live the journey that I have, even though a lot of it has been the most difficult portions of my life, but it definitely has shaped me into a very loving, nurturing woman. And that's just like the family aspect of things. Now, the work ethic brings it 10 times higher because
Yeah,
you know, you see what your parents did. It's like, okay, if they can do that, I can probably do 10 times more. Like, I can,
exactly.
they created me. Like, both parents go through all of this, we can handle 10 times more. That's how I see it. And I'm so thankful that I'm able to have that outlook because, like you said, that other side, it gets heavy. I remember when my dad did pass, like my mom's friends, like her previous friends, they didn't want anything to do with her. They were like, we can't be associated with you. And
Wow.
we can't. Like, we don't want to think of our husbands like being how your husband is. Like, he's gone. Like, we can't do it. And it's sad. That's a whole identity crisis right there where what all you knew before is just being pulled away from you. And you got to just make what you can the best that you can.
Yeah, you can't just, it's traumatic and it's hard to go through for, the loss of a loved one, but you can't necessarily just stop there. You have to keep going. You have to keep pushing forward. There's still life to live, especially for the parent. Like, you have kids to raise, at least in certain circumstances, you do have kids to raise and you have a career, or you have, there's something out there that obviously keeps you going. And it's hard to find that, and it's hard to just keep pushing on. And it's hard when you have people on the outside who, like you just said, don't want to be associated with you because of what you've been through.
Yeah. And I unfortunately had to experience the loss of my mom as well. So I don't like saying lost because I feel like we never have lost touch with each other.
Yeah.
She's always here. She's always present. But experiencing her passing and having to raise my three younger siblings, I understand that it's hard. It is so hard to grieve, take care of a child, take care of yourself, and then your responsibilities. So seeing and living what my mom had to go through, like, I feel terrible about it. And even your mother, like, having to like put her life to the side, and not even just that aspect, but like caring and nurturing you guys while worrying for her husband and caring for him and taking care of him and trying to get the whole household together. That is a huge, 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 huge challenge that people just think like, oh, like, it's fine.
Right.
It'll get better with time. Honey,
It doesn't. You just have to keep going.
yeah, we don't get this time back either. So I commend your mom. I commend my mother. I commend all of the wives, the children, just for continuing to keep going because Yeah, it gets better with time, but the obstacles that you're leaping over in that time that you're not getting back, my goodness.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
different.
and even my mom and I were talking about it the other day. One night she was just thinking, and when my dad was deployed back in 2011, um, and he was injured during that deployment, but she was a full-time student in college. She was working, she was taking care of us, she was taking care of the house, and then like she had to put her degree on hold. She was like 30 credits away from finishing her degree, and she had to like drop it because we were living in, Cleveland, Ohio, and we had to go to San Antonio for his recovery. And so she had to put it on hold to figure out what was going on with him, figure out what was still going on with us, figure out what was going on with our house because we owned a house there. All the moving pieces. And she was thinking, she was like, how did I even do that? Because she's back in college now trying to finish her degree. And she's like, how did I do it back then when, my husband was deployed? I was raising, we were 8 and 9 at the time. So we were young girls. We were in school. She was in school. She was working, doing all of
Hmm.
these things. And she's like, now it's like, she obviously realized she's older and she can't necessarily have the same capacity as what she had when she was younger. But she's in school, she's has two adult children who still live at home. She has a wounded husband to take care of too, and so it's like it never ends. Like you just have to keep pushing through, like you said.
Yeah, and one thing I know your mom can agree with is that the world does not stop moving. Like
Yes.
there's no pause button, and she just, you can't stop the world and just be like, please, just wait a second, let me catch up. Like you gotta
Right.
just keep chugging. You have no choice, and she's a strong woman for that.
Yeah.
And a lot of people can fold under pressure and just drop, and she didn't do that.
Yeah, because
So,
throughout the recovery process you see, um it's heartbreaking to see so many wives and so many, fiancés, girlfriends, whatever they were at the time, who are, exactly that, fold under pressure and they say, I can't do this.
mhm.
And, ultimately end up leaving. And it's so hard to see that. It's it's understandable because it is, such a challenging lifestyle, but it's still so heartbreaking to see that I don't want to say people give up, but they fold under the pressure of what life, hands them.
Yeah, it definitely takes a level of strength to keep pushing and a lot of faith. Whatever
Yeah.
you may believe in, it's fine, but you have faith in some higher power, and that's what gets you through. You can't go off of your own strength. It's just not possible. It's
No.
not possible. My
No.
mom was heavily in the church, and she did end up falling off a little bit, and it got rocky, but I'm here. I'm picking up the pieces. We're in church. We are continuously growing in our faith as much as we can because there's no other way through than with God in my personal experience. And that's what's getting me through my days where I feel like I just can't do it sometimes.
Yeah.
But the world doesn't stop. You gotta keep going. You
Yeah.
can breather, but there is no pause.
Yeah.
So,
And like you
yeah.
said, you still have, you know, three younger siblings. And so you still have to keep going and you have to find a way to take care of yourself in that aspect. And I think that's the hardest thing. And that's the thing that always gets pushed to the side is, finding a place where you're like, okay, I can take a breather now. Like it doesn't have to be that constant go, go, go. But, I have to take a breather and I have to do something for me too.
Yeah, like all right, when I see you in 2 weeks,
I
honestly.
know.
That's that breather we're looking for.
I know.
Yeah, I'm excited, just also allowing them to have the independence and kind of have that realization of, oh yeah, sis is really, she's pulling through for us all the time. And she's not
Yeah.
here right now, so we gotta bunch up as the three and get what we need to done. Like they are the most amazing three humans, little humans I've ever met in my life. They are
Yeah.
amazing. I love them so much. But we all need our breaks from each other. It's we're here for it.
Yeah. For
Yeah.
sure. And like, like you said, seeing each other in 2 weeks, that's a breather in itself. And even though we might have tons of things on our schedules, that's, we can take part in, but just being around, other military kids, other kids who have a
Mhm.
similar background, that's like a huge relief, in itself.
It's getting back to that identity that you long for so much. Because
Yes.
even with you, I'm sure, like not being around, like that military world as often as you probably were as a child, it gets tough. And
Yes.
this is like this trip is one of those instances where you're able to kind of just live back in that, in your childhood, like the pure form of what you belonged in before the chaos happened.
Yeah. A lot of us, when we did the Tampa event, a lot of us NGS kids, that was just the topic of conversation of we were so removed from that lifestyle, that military life after, our situations happened. And you're so right. You end up longing for it. And I remember moving here, we're 2.5 hours away from McDill. And so just that distance from, home to military life, it was such a struggle. And none of the kids here understand. None of them get it. They're like, oh, your dad is missing a leg. Like we feel sorry for you. And it's to the point of like, yes, you can feel sympathy, but it's like we're continuing to move on. We're taking the trials that we went through and just moving on because that's all you have to do. Like we
Yeah.
said earlier, you have to move on. But it's so hard when you're not around that community who's in a sense used to it, whatever that situation may be, to be put in an area where it's, predominantly civilian and they're like, oh, this is a weird lifestyle you're living.
Yeah, it's like a crisis in their eyes. Like they look at you as
Yeah.
like a huge victim, and it's not necessarily that. You don't want to be victimized your entire life following what's happened. You hold it with honor. It's not some like plea to have attention or sympathy.
Right.
Your respect is great. Your
Yeah.
respect is great. Thanks. But yeah, the civilian life, like I actually, my little brother, he saw a man in uniform yesterday and I didn't even notice that he lived in my neighborhood. And he was like, "Oh my gosh, look." And I'm like, that's how sad it is. Like we're not even around it as often as we'd want. He's
Yeah.
like ecstatic over this one man in uniform, like, "Look, look, look to your left." And I'm like, "What? Like, is there a plane?" Like, what? And it's a man in uniform. He was so excited to see that
Yeah.
because that's what he remembers life being like.
Right.
Just that man in uniform, it like brings like a sense of security or something to you. You're
I
just
will
like,
say I'm probably older than your younger brother is, but I do get excited every time, because it's so rare, but we do have a reserve unit by us. And so, that off instance where, you see someone in uniform, like you get so excited. And then obviously like when I do go to base, it's a whole new feeling
isn't
of
it?
security, of relief, of like, I'm back in my element of where I once was.
Yeah, I get so down in the dumps when I think of like my military, my card expiring.
Yes.
I'm like, no, I'm gonna be one of you guys. I'm a civilian. Like that dependent status doesn't last forever, unfortunately. Even though
Yeah.
I don't even go on base, it's just knowing that I'm capable of doing so. I
Yeah.
just, oh, those commissary days, man. I
I
miss it.
know.
It's a
I
whole different
know.
life. It really is.
Honestly, the PX is like every time we end up going to McDill, that's where I go clothes shopping at. Like I
Yeah.
always and the clearance racks, like honestly. But yeah, it's a hard thing to even think about that day coming. Like I've still got a couple years, but that day coming of this is not going to be, it's literally your identity being ripped away.
Yeah, I'm 23 now, and I think mine will go to 26, but I'm very unsure of that. Not too positive. So we're just waiting it out, getting those letters from the VA every so often, just learning as we go at this point. It's a
Yeah.
learning process.
Right. Especially because it's just you. You're the first to learn it all. You have to go through it. You have to learn it all yourself.
Yeah, that is tough too in itself, just because I don't have anyone to look to get the information from. So while I'm figuring it out, I have to bookmark and keep it all in line in perspective for my siblings so they're not lost and alone and confused. Like being the leader
Right.
of the house is a bit difficult, and I do it with pride, but there are some sleepless nights where you're just making sure that every T is crossed and every I is dotted for the next one in line.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, huge props to you because like you have taken on so much, at such a young age. Like no other 23-year-old would be able to handle the load that you are handling.
Thank you. I literally every time someone asks me how I do it, I'm just like, it's God, I promise. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't have much more to tell you. I finish my undergrad this December, and I'm like, what? How are you doing this? Because my mom, she passed away my sophomore year, and I was like, we're halfway through this. I don't think we're doing it. Like, we're not finishing it. And my mom had promised me before she passed, she was like, promise me two things. You will graduate college and you will make me a grandmother one day. And I was like, girl,
Oh,
I was like, Mom, you gotta stop. Like, those are two big requests. I just don't know if I could ever fulfill. And she was like, promise me. So we got the pinkies out, did what had to be done. And now we're crossing off one of those promises, like the big check in the box. And I really don't like I don't know how I got here other than God. I That's really the biggest motivator, and those prayers to give me strength and peace of mind to going through this. Like he's provided that. That's why we're here. That's
yeah.
why we're at.
Yeah.
So,
And like you said, your mom's with you every step of the way.
yeah.
And, still holding your hand and guiding you and loving on you and giving you all you need to, push through even those tough days.
Yeah. She's very much present. She makes it known. Everybody has her mouth in this house. So like, okay, we hear you. Gotcha. Love you.
There's never a dull moment.
Oh, never. So much emotion in one household, but I wouldn't trade it for the world. That's for sure.
I'm sure. And, I want to ask you one thing, and you're probably going to give so much different advice than everyone else I've asked. But what would you say to another military child?
I would say to another military child that you really need to find your peace point within the chaos of the world. We're all on a roller coaster in life, whether it be a happy moment or a sad moment. You have to make the most out of your roller coaster, the highs and the lows, get through it, find your peace point, and maneuver through that the best that you can, and always keep your peace the priority, because if you can't be at peace, the rest of the world that's depending on you, your work, your family, your education, nothing can continue to thrive if you're not at your peak of peace. So that's my advice to the military child, the family, everybody.
Yes, I love that. And thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing your incredibly amazing, but I'm sure tough and, challenging, but so rewarding journey.
Yeah, of course. I'm honored to be on here. I listen to the other podcasts and I'm like, I don't know if I could do this, but we should try it. Yeah.
It is fun, and it's really nice to share stories and hear stories.
Yeah, thank you for doing this.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for listening to Grace of a Military Child in Life podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to give it a like, follow, and comment. Also, be sure to check out Instagram and Facebook at Grace of a Military Child in Life for more awesome content. For information on the podcast, Military Child Bigs and Littles, GoAMCL blog, or other resources, visit www.goamcl.org. You can also email me at Gracie, that's Gracie @goamcl.org, with any questions or comments. To be a guest on the podcast, you can schedule it at www.goamcl.org/schedule a podcast, all one word, or contact me via social media or email. Stay tuned for the next episode where another incredible story is shared.